We now move into our next session, Survivor, Fighter and Crusader. Sunitha Krishnan's fight against sex trafficking, and Sunitha will be in conversation with Swarna Rajagopalan.
So I want to start by telling you that when I was asked to interview Sunitha in this session, we'd met in passing, literally in passing. I was coming out of a building and she was going in. We'd never talked before. I knew her work, I knew Prajwala. But I said, okay, what can you expect from a memoir of someone who's surely too young to write a memoir? And I was in for a very pleasant surprise. I read the book in a sitting, and this is a strong recommendation in the age of brain fog. I read the book in a sitting. It's written accessibly. It's written in an uplifting style. It's like traveling with, I told her this, traveling with Sunitha from Chennai to Delhi, in the same compartment and sharing life stories. So that makes for a riveting narration, I think. And I have a few questions for her intended to get you thinking, so you can ask questions as well. I want to start by asking you, Sunitha, you and I both are well aware there are countless gender inequities in our society. This is really a supermarket of gender injustice. Why sex trafficking? Why prostitution? What speaks to you and compels you to devote your life? And what I must say is a way that is just full of marvel for me. She throws herself at the problem, quite literally. And there is a physicality and a daring to her work that I find quite admirable and awesome. Why this?
Before I answer your question, Swarna, I just want to say that I am so humbled and honored that I am here today. Hindu Lit for Life was the first festival that invited me, and coincidentally, the first festival in my life to attend as an author. So extremely privileged. Thank you. Why sex trafficking? Why sex crime? I think at the age of 15, when I was gang raped, one of the most important things that stayed with me was how a victim of sex crime is treated by the society. I don't remember the rape so much as all the taunts of the world around me, the way the world looked at me, and this entire conspiracy of the world to make me think that I'm responsible for that damn crime. Like, it is not those 8 men who raped me who were the problem, that I, who went in the night, was the problem. The freedom given by my parents was the problem. So everything was around me. And I think that was the first time that I understood, or rather recognized, how any victim of sex crime is treated. And the pure rage and anger, I think that came into me 37 years back, which continues in me 37 years later, even today, perhaps was a driving force to kind of zero on this space. I said, if I am going to dedicate my life, my breath, my everything, my entire existence on this earth for any cause, it would be to fight sex crime. And among the various kind of sex crime, I felt trafficking of a person for the purposes of selling sexual services, for commercial sexual exploitation, is the worst form of sex crime any human being can be subjected to. Because that's not a one-time thing. It's like a person in a brothel is raped 20 times a day, 30 times a day, for weeks together, months together, years together. I said, I want to fight that. And that is how I chose that. And I'm happy that for the last 37 years, I'm still here.
It's actually very hard to continue doing this work for such a long period So that's really something that we should applaud. Anyway, this conversation is going to go a little zigzag because I tried really hard to force a seamless, streamlined narrative, and Sunitha kept saying, let it be spontaneous. So zigzag it is. So I'm going to take you a little bit away from this. Now, there are many remarkable things. You think you pick up this book by Sunitha Krishnan, it's going to be full of serious thoughts about trafficking and evil and crime and, you know, oh my God, it's going to be such a dull, depressing read. Can't I just watch the news? All these thoughts. But she tells you things about herself that, as I said, it's like talking to her in a train, on a train journey. And one of the things you learn about her, and so this is my excuse for the digression, she loves movies. Okay? So I want to kind of talk about this spate of films about women in prostitution, Hira Mandi, Gangubai. And my question is not what do you think of the films. My question is how, for a person trying to understand the issue, who maybe does not read, will not pick up a trafficking report by UNODC, how realistic are these stories and images, and what can they take away that will take us to the next point of our conversation?
Some of the movies are very realistic. Some of them are made so that you can consume it and you want it that way, like a Gangubai Kathiawadi is what you like and you want it. That is not what sex trafficking is all about. But there are movies like the one I made, Na Bangaru Talli, which doesn't have too many audience.
Would you repeat the name slowly?
Na Bangaru Talli, which means my
Na
dearest
Bangaru
daughter.
Talli.
Yes. But it didn't have great box office thing, but it brought out the entire issue in its entirety in the most realistic form. There are others like Lakshmi, there are Bazaar, which are more realistic, but somehow we really don't like real ones, right? We are not so, it's nice to talk about real and realistic, but when you actually take it to the screen, nobody wants to see real things. They want to see all the masala. They want to see one hero hitting 1,000 people in one go. That is the kind of masala we like. We like masalas like Animal. We like masalas like that. So somewhere the real and realistic don't get the audience. If they get the audience, then more realistic stuff also will come out, including subjects like sex trafficking.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, and I considered whether this would be an appropriate place, but you know, to be talking about people understanding what the problem is and why they should be concerned and why they should take the opportunity to do what they can do. One of the confusing things for people outside this line of work, working on these issues very broadly, is the debate between say a position like yours where you are against all forms of sex trafficking, sex work, or prostitution, and then there is the sex workers' rights position. This is a very poor outsider characterization of the debate. For the people who are learning that there is a debate today, could you give them really quick summaries of both? And I know that you also talk in your book about, this is where I'm going, about you express this wish that there would be a dialogue between people who think so diametrically differently and take polarized positions on this. What would that dialogue look like? So both two questions in one.
I think the polarized positioning comes due to a lack of understanding. Meaning, where is
mutual understanding?
Lack of understanding. Where is the question of confusion when a 3-year-old baby is getting sold for prostitution? If you look at the kind of content now available on the internet, on several porn sites, you will see commercially sold content, video content, of child sexually abusive material where there are 6 months babies. So that is the age from which sex trafficking starts. Now, this sex trafficked person is 45% of the problem. So 45% of the problem, nobody should have any polarization, nobody should have any confusion. It is bloody non-negotiable. Children, nowhere in the world. But the same children, if you don't rescue them on time, if the same children are not removed from the place of exploitation at the age when they should be, or they should not be there first of all, but by mistake they are there, you don't remove them, then you allow them to be there for years together, and then they are 18 and 19-year-old. Now when they are 18 and 19-year-old, what happened at the age of 10 of rape, of exploitation, of being coerced into an exploitative situation? Does it become a matter of self-determination? A choice to sell your body? Somewhere, when we conflate too many things, that is where the problem comes. The word prostitution in India is very clearly defined by the law. I'm not defining it. The Immoral Traffic Act clearly defines it as commercial sexual exploitation. Okay. The word sex work is not defined. The confusion comes when you conflate prostitution, sex work, and sex trafficking.
So
leave the ones who are doing voluntarily aside, keep them aside. I don't see them. I don't meet them on the street. I don't see them in the brothels. They are there. I'm not denying that they are there. But that is not the constituency that I'm talking to. Far too many times everything is confused. And that is why I said lack of understanding.
So from your point of view, these are, in a sense, complementary and compatible struggles that might be parallel rather than mutually opposed. Am I understanding?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
And that is, if you give it a little thought, if you get inside to understand it, then you will understand the entirety of the problem. And you'll be able to differentiate, okay, this is what is voluntary choice and that is there. That's a different story. There are a different set of people. The ones who are here could be sex trafficked, could be, put in a situation of absolute optionlessness and, constrained choices, and they are a different lot.
One of the things we talked about in our initial discussion was it was important to both of us to describe what an enabling environment would be. You say, why did I write this book? She starts out by saying. And one of the things she talks about is her work to create an enabling. And what do we mean by an enabling environment? What would it look like and who would create it?
So for that, you need to understand what a person in the space of exploitation has gone through. Because only when you understand that, you will understand what does this person require to come back into the so-called mainstream world of, healing and recovery. Now, a person who is sold in a space of commercial sexual exploitation, the fundamental nuances of that business or that revenue generation. So let me be a little more, I'll just take one step backward again. We are talking about an organized crime. We're talking about a fastest growing criminal enterprise. And we're talking about a crime where women and children constitute the majority. Okay? Now, the fundamental of this industry is sexual service. Okay? Now here a person, now I'll take a young adult of 13 or 14 who is lured by in the name of love or in the name of, aspiration, coerced and brought in and put into this place of exploitation. She starts from there with a sense of trust, hope, and a whole lot of everything is going to be better. It's only when she reaches there in the destination that she realizes there's no love here. There's no job here, there's no film role here, there is nothing what her aspirations or fantasies were all about. What is here? It is selling or giving yourself to that many X number of human beings every day. Because that's a revenue model. You can't sleep with one person a day and then say, okay, this is going to generate revenue. Now, this revenue model has different players. There are people earning on this. That is why they have taken so much of trouble to get that X person from there to here, right? So there is a pimp, there is a brothel keeper, there is an organizer, there is a financer, there is an advocate, there could be a policeman, there could be several people for all things. Now all of them have to get their mullah. That means the amount has to be significant. So here is a person where so many people are controlling her life. Now, what happens inside where you're selling sexual services? Sex is not defined. Sex is not said, okay, this is sex. Whatever the buyer imagines or fantasizes or demands, that is sex. So, I have removed close to 29,000 women and children out of sex slavery. And each of the 29,000 have told me that every day they would have at least 2 buyers or 3 buyers who would just beat them up, or take a cigarette and scar them, or take a blade and cut them, or whip them. That is the form of sex they want. Okay? Now you're looking at it not on once in a lifetime situation. It's an everyday scene. Now this is the person who's going through this everyday, trauma. And to deal with the trauma and to survive in the damn exploitation, now she has to take alcohol, she has to take substance, she has to continue in the space because she has to survive, somehow survive. So she is also getting a lot of physical damages, sexually transmitted infection, reproductive tract infections, cervical damages, traumatic brain injuries. I understand Indian men or the Indian buyers like to bang the head of the person onto the bedpost or to wherever or to the wall, and that causes untreated brain injuries. This is the sum total of the person that we are talking about. Emotional damage, physical damage, and a whole lot of body, mind and soul that is crushed. What is the enabling environment required?
What is the environment for, I
so
guess,
now look back. For this kind
to
of
create the ability to
absolutely.
Move on.
So, so every of this damages has to be addressed through this enabling environment. It has to be psychologically empowering, healing. It has to create a space of recovery. It has to also build coping mechanisms to deal with the larger world. It could be skills, it could be scholastic abilities, it could be livelihood, it could be just understanding your identity as yourself. I is me. One of the biggest things a person loses in the process of being sex trafficked is her identity. My name is Sunitha. I'm sold here, name change. First raid happens, name change. Name change, name change. I don't know, in the next how many ever years, how many thousand times your name is changed, so much so that you forget your original name also. So even restoring back that this is me, this is myself, is part of that enabling environment. So enabling environment is not one process, multiple process, because any enabling environment cannot happen until I'm de-addicted or detoxified and I'm not open to understanding what somebody is telling me to do it. So enabling environment is a basket of several processes that empowers a person to see herself and start finding ways to cope with it.
Yeah. So that's a great place from which, one of what both of us believe is that any of this work is not, it's not just Sunitha Krishnan is so great, so passionate, so wonderful, she does good work. Trafficking is her problem, I can move on. Every social problem or political problem that we pick up belongs to all of us. So the solution, this enabling environment that you're describing, the responsibility for this also belongs to all of us. This is one of the things that we're completely, in agreement about. So our agreement, speaking about agreement, was that we would take the conversation to this point. What is it that people here who are moved by what you said, what is it that they can do? Of course, you can pick up her book, get it autographed and read it, but what else is there that each of us can do? And what I want to take you to the beginning of her journey. She talks about being in college, and I found this very moving because oftentimes in this extremely corporate, professional social work environment, we think that you have to have training for something in order to do it, that you have to have a grant, you have to have an office, you have to have X, Y, Z, check off 17 boxes. But what you really need is the will to start. And Sunitha starts her story off by talking about how after college, she would actually go to the Majestic City area in Bangalore and observe. She would simply observe how women were standing around, how they were exploited, how they were picked up, who did the selling, who did the bargaining. She took the time to teach herself, starting and acknowledging that she was, she really knew nothing. She says, I knew nothing, over and over and over again on her journey. To me, this is very impressive in an age when everybody knows everything. So given that most of us start off where in that place of not knowing, what are the points of entry where you would like to see citizen engagement with your issue?
I think two things I want to clarify.
We also agree that we don't want anyone to say to you how passionate you are. That's cancelled. What else?
No, so two things I want to say before I get into the answer. Engagement is not just recognition and appreciation. In fact, sometimes people just do that and close the chapter and walk off. I know there are hundreds of people whom I know very well who would not touch my book by a barge pole. For the simple reason, and the simple logic they give me is, oh my God, I can't handle so much of problem.
Yeah.
Engagement is about understanding what this problem is, understanding the various manifestations of it, in its entirety, understanding the root causes and where it is coming from. It is also about understanding your own limitations, your strengths, and then, kind of fixing from where can I start responding. Not everybody needs to become an activist. You can sit where you are. Right here in this audience, there's this one gentleman who knew about my work, got really, really, completely enamored by it, and he said, and he sent this message saying that I can't do anything, but I'm going to pray for you for strength every day. And he sent me 50 rupees. He's sitting right here in this audience. That is also an engagement where you take that first baby steps to understand and then kind of figure out your limitations. Everybody has his limitations and liabilities. No, you don't need to become Mahatma Gandhi to change the world. You can sit right where you are, within your families, doing whatever you are, understanding what your core competencies are, what you can give in terms of your time, in terms of your skills, in terms of your knowledge, in terms of what you can do to change. A very simple thing, I would say. One of the major factors that generates demand for sex trafficking is pornography. Okay. Now, if each one of you don't need to become a sex trafficking activist, you don't need to support Sunitha Krishnan or Prajwala or whatever outfit is working on it. In your own spaces, if you can talk to one person whom you know who is consuming porn and say, what are the damages for it? Which means that you need to understand what are the damages of porn, what it means to sexualize images, and how it leads to several other things, and talk to them, engage with them. That is also engagement, okay? So engagement is not entering the field. Engagement can be wherever you are, in whichever way you can, within your own limitations, but doing it mindfully. Think, I know this problem, and this is a way I can change it. I can be a better person by talking to 2 more people about it. That's also engagement. I can provide my skill. That is also an engagement. So engagement is coming from what you have. And you may not have everything, but you have that one thing, that can also change it. And that can be something very innocuous for the larger world, but it could be very significant for the cause that one is fighting for.
For example, it could be, I went to the Lit Fest and I heard a session
Absolutely.
where Sunitha Krishnan talked about this issue. Great. We can take questions. I think we're doing okay on time.
I may just also add, Swarna, that as we are talking, we've just got the information that in the RG car case in Kolkata, the court has come to the final verdict, and Sanjoy Roy has been convicted of rape and murder. So one step of hope, but also a lot of anxiety that one case is having such a speedy justice, and it has moved at such fast pace. But there are millions of cases of sex crime across the country of children, of 5-year-olds and 10-year-olds, which has not yet ever reached either the charge sheet stage or the trial stage. So yes, there is something to hope for, and yes, there's also many things. And when I say engagement, even taking your mobile phone today and making a tweet or a post demanding for speedy justice for all victims of sex crime across the country every day for the next 1 month is also engagement.
Yes. Yes.
It's all in your hand if you choose to.
One of the other things you talk about in the book is getting jobs for some of the women who've lived
Exactly,
in your home. But you also say, and this is something I want to point to, we have a tendency, and those of us that run NGOs working on gender issues, journalists will call us up and say, can we meet victims? We want to interview. Like, why do you want to parade people's misery? Understand the issues in the abstract, and you should be appalled enough, outraged enough. You don't really need, well, to use the same word again, a pornography of suffering. You really don't need it. But this tendency that we have to always, it also goes to, I employed so many people. Now, do you really want someone to walk into your shop with 5 employees, knowing that you employed 5 domestic violence /acid /something survivors? Do I want my story known to everybody that I have a professional transaction with? This is something also that we need to, when we talk about enabling environments, we want people to move beyond and rebuild their lives. I think we also need to consider some of these behaviors. I do want to open up the floor, and am I? Okay, so, right. But I'm actually also happy to give a little bit of more time. Is there someone who's going to?
But Swarna, can I just answer that first question? I think the statement you made, I think the biggest challenge for me and my work is the attitude of people. People, will never forget a chance to remind the person where they come from, including people from the media. One of my, and I write that in my book too, one of my greatest pain was being constantly identified as a rape survivor. Every time there is a rape across the country, people will call me. Not because I have worked with thousands of sex crime victims, that I know the criminal justice system, I worked, there are hundreds of convictions that has come because of the enabling environment we have created through our organization. But they're calling you because you're a rape survivor who has become an activist, And this constant need to remind is something that becomes the greatest block for a person to come back to mainstream society. I remember once in one of the hotels, a girl was provided a job based on our conversation to the HR manager. In just 4 days, the HR manager started calling me. She says, "Ma'am, can you counsel this girl?" I said, "Why?" "No, she's talking to the men a lot." I said, "What is the problem?" No, she comes from this background, no. Something happens. Somewhere that back of your mind, that whole baggage that you're carrying of your attitude has never gone. Every survivor needs unconditional acceptance, empathy and compassion, and not a reminder again and again that you have come from there, And that is the enabling environment at least each one of us can make starting today from our hearts, It is ours. It is not an external factor, it's an internal factor that I choose within me to create an unconditional environment for any victim to come back to society.
We had so many questions that I can't. I'm going to just go at random.
Please use the mic.
The third person, yes. On this side, and then one person on that side, yes. Next to the camera, and then we'll keep going.
Do use the mic, because one of the gifts that I have got from the wonderful traffickers that I work with is that they have damaged my eardrum and I can't hear if you just talk from there. And I can't do lip reading from such long distance.
Or can we have the mic posted up front and people can come up?
Good evening, ma'am. I am Venkat from Chennai. I am working as a software professional. So first of all is the good session and information of a session. So my question is, so nowadays many females are many rape cases and harassment is facing. So some women only recover that and achieve the goal. But most of the women, if you affected harassment or rape, means suddenly take a wrong decision, suicide or some decision, not recover. So what is your suggestion and advice?
First of all, if we can change our attitude, half the problem will be solved.
What?
Our biggest attitude problem is that a woman's honor is located in her vagina. So something happens there, your honor is gone. That is all what all of us think. If that attitude can change, more and more women who are going through harassment will find the courage to speak up and not think that their honor and prestige is destroyed.
Can we get the mic? Is there a mic on this side? Yeah. Mic capture, that's what they call it.
Please.
No, come on.
Okay. I just want my original...
This side next.
My original question was, what do you see in this 35-year journey? But you gave the shocking news, it's the fastest growing industry. So where do you see? Is there a horizon, a bright future, or are we doomed?
Every day is bright for me because every day I fight and I want to continue.
That's a great answer.
But if you ask me, has anything changed in the last 37 years? And do I see anything changing? I think until and unless all of us don't decide to change our attitude, nothing is going to change. The day all of us together collectively, and that is why I think Swarna rightly said it can't be just Sunitha Krishnan's problem. It has to become everybody's problem. If it becomes everybody's problem and everybody takes a call that we from our own spaces, in our own limitations are going to fight it in whichever way we can. I as a father, I as a mother, I am a brother, I as a sister, I as a common citizen, I'm going to bring a zero tolerance space for this. Then I see a very bright future. I see a bright future when no woman, no child, no human being will be touched and anybody will tolerate.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Firstly, it's in high respect from my side that you're taking all the possible ways in getting it changed. There are multiple questions which I would like to ask you. So firstly, making it as a direct question, so what do you say about the Supreme Court 2022 order making the sex workers as professional and recognizing the sex workers as professional? And second question could be, like as you mentioned that pornography is the main issue behind whatever the social evils which is happening in today. And we in India has already witnessed the Nirbhaya and one on other side Disha and something which has happened in Kolkata and now very recently which has happened in university which is not very, very far from me. Knowing the fact that pornography is already an issue, why pornography is not a crime in India?
So let me answer the first question. You must read the judgment, the May 2022 judgment. Nowhere Supreme Court says that it is a profession. It just says that any human being, as per the Constitution, has a right to live and has a right to choices. Okay, that's all. I am also one of the respondents in that case. So humbly requesting you to read the judgment again to understand in what spirit it was written. Pornography, we as consumers can become the reason to ban or end pornography. Supreme Court once tried to ban pornography, and I was there in the court when that order was passed, which had to be changed in less than a week. The day the order was passed and the IMB in ministry said that all porn sites are going to be banned, in just one day, 18 million letters to the ministry, how dare you ban it? And they had to reverse the thing. So I think high time we not look at the law, the lawmakers, the policies for such changes. We as consumers, if we can change our thinking, a lot of things, this is all porn or anything else is a demand-driven market. Who is the demand? You and me are the demand. We change, the market also changes. We stop consuming, there will not be any such content. Do you know India is the largest content generator for child pornography, which is a wrong word, child sexually abusive material? Why? We are consuming it. That is why somebody is making it. Some child is getting raped in our houses so that somebody wants to see such videos, and we happily, disseminate it on our WhatsApp, in all our groups, on our YouTube, wherever possible. Okay? We will not even report. So somewhere, it is high time we stop blaming the government, the law, the police, and start looking inward and say, how have I contributed to this problem? And how can I become part of the solution?
Yeah, I have a
we're
question.
following, maybe it's because I'm an international relations person, we're following realpolitik. They who hold the mic shall ask the question.
So mine's a two-part question.
Yeah.
So the first part is every time a rape or like Nirbhaya or Arjikar incident comes in the news, men suddenly get up saying not all men. Suddenly, not all men. The conversation almost always steers around that. When they don't understand that we're not objecting the gender, we're objecting the misogyny or the patriarchal ideas that perpetrate this crime. So how do we move forward as a society in move that conversation forward where it doesn't fall on men's ego, but they also understand that they are a big chunk of the problem.
Not all men is something that even I believe in, because while I have survived sexual assault on my life, I've met some amazing men. My husband, my father. You must read my book to know more of the wonderful men who have played. So I think we need to kind of become a little more creative in wording and creating the narrative to build that it is an attitude that we are targeting. It's not the gender. Because this attitude can be carried by women also. Okay? So that attitude has no gender. And therefore, maybe somewhere we are failing in wording it rightly. Okay? And the day we can figure out how to word it, to make understand that this is not about this man or this man or this man, it is about an attitude that is fostering and nurturing this kind of violence. And that attitude can be carried by anybody. I remember one woman, I don't want to mention name, But in Ratna's own city, Kolkata, a very high-profile woman, an industrialist, well-read, highly accomplished person, shouted at me in a public gathering. And her statement was that if you rehabilitate all the women, what about the safety of my daughter? So there is this person who believes that some daughters have to be raped in a brothel so that her daughter is safe to walk on the street. This is an attitude. So it's not the woman who's a problem, that attitude is a problem. And high time we start differentiating between the person and the problem. The person is not the problem. The problem is the attitude, and target that. And once we start targeting that, we'll write, okay, these words are not working, we'll find out new words which will work. And we have to mindfully do it and create. So it's not a one-time affair, it's a regular, constantly thinking and creatively addressing this issue.
I want to, I agree that women internalize patriarchal
Absolutely.
and misogynistic norms, but I also want to say to you, I don't think we should worry so much about protecting the egos of men. Society does a fine job of it.
Yeah.
Say what you need to say, speak your truth, they can adjust. But we are now out of time. So I want to close, I'm sorry, this is the structure of the program. I want to close by telling you 2 reasons why this book is really worth picking up. First of all, women...
Book, Swarna. You must show the book. So that
I will show the book. You see, I'm really bad at this. One thing is that women don't write their memoirs. We don't think our stories are important enough. We don't consider ourselves achievers. We do everything in the same spirit by which we mop the kitchen counter. I think that when a woman sits down to write her story, it's worth reading. The second thing is, this is not, to quote Meera Syal out of context, life is not all ha-ha, hee-hee. This book does not arrive at the final 25th anniversary group photo of Prajwala. It begins at the beginning, and it takes you through the ups and downs, what she gets right, what they got wrong, what was hard,
but
what
Swarna,
was easy,
this is
what was
also
miraculous.
I'm sorry, I'm interjecting. This book is also about my Emilson bones. It's
Yes.
also about my God.
It's also about the
It's
human
about
being.
So many other things, not just the problem that I'm fighting.
True. So it really is a personal memoir that tells you a very remarkable political journey as well. So on that note, thank you, Sunitha, for writing. Although I still think it's too early for a memoir. Thank you for writing it. And thank you all for being such a wonderful, attentive audience.